I will give you 5 very simple tips for if you want to bring up a weak body part for a more balanced physique, or you want to have that one freakishly big ass muscle of yours which will make you stand out. And no, it has nothing to do with just increasing your volume. That is the worst possible thing you could do. The first and most important tip in this video is exercise sequencing. Let's say you want to bring up your arms and make them as freakishly big as possible. It does not make any sense to just put them at the very end of the session. After you have already performed 10, 15 hard fucking sets to or near failure, meaning that your CNS is fucking cooked. So it only makes sense that if you want to prioritize a muscle group, you need to put the exercises that hit that muscle group at the very start of the session, as your CNS is at its freshest state there, therefore allowing you to get the best possible stimulus for that given muscle, allowing you to grow it as big as possible, as you cannot grow a muscle to its potential when it is just tackled on at the end of the session due to your CNS being absolutely fried and therefore you not being able to access the high threshold motor units. Therefore, your exercise sequencing within the workout should look something like this. Depending on whether you want to prioritize a muscle group, whether you absolutely don't give a fuck about the muscle group getting big, or something in between. But for this to work, you need to accept the trade-offs. You cannot prioritize every single muscle group in your body at the same time. For example, if you put your arms at the very start of a session, of course, your push and pull work will suffer to some extent. You won't absolutely plummet your numbers, you won't lose all of your strength, your muscle is still fucking there, but that is the cost of you wanting to prioritize your arms, so you need to live with the trade-off. You cannot prioritize everything at once, so you can sequence for 3 months, prioritize this muscle group, then this, and so on. You get the idea. The second tip is mastering your exercise selection. You need to get the idea out of your head to just train every single muscle group in a stretch position and disregarding the leverages that the muscle group has. For example, if you want to train your triceps in a press, it doesn't make any sense to load it in a stretch position, as the triceps has worse leverage than the chest and the shoulders in that position, meaning that you cannot bias or maximally grow your triceps in that press. For the triceps, you want it to be the heaviest at the lockout, as the triceps has the best leverage to produce force and therefore will get the best possible stimulus in that shouldered position. The same concept applies to every single muscle group. A dumbbell pullover is not a lat exercise, but a long head of the triceps and a chest exercise due to those muscle groups having the best leverage to produce force in that position. But if you do a cable pullover and stay in the range of motion that the lats do have the best leverage, all of a sudden the pullover motion is one of the best exercises for the lats. I cannot go too deep into this topic as it's a whole fucking video in and of itself. Let me know if you're interested in it. It is old news that getting stupid strong over a long period of time is absolutely essential for building massive fucking muscle, but it absolutely matters in which exercises you get strong at. If you want to maximize your growth in a specific area, especially if it's a weak point and other muscle groups can take over the movement, it does not make any sense to just rely on compound movements because they are a mass builder. You need to absolutely embrace isolation movements. For example, if your shoulders and especially your triceps are an absolute strong point and completely overshadow your chest, which absolutely sucks in comparison, will not see significant improvements in his chest from a press alone. He could put on 100 fucking kilos to his bench press, but his chest would still suck. Now compare that to an isolation movement where you are solely performing the joint action of that specific muscle. For the chest now, pure horizontal adduction instead of incorporating other muscle groups and their functions into the movement. The only fucking viable option that your body can do is to recruit as much chest muscle fibers as possible, as there's nothing else that can take over the movement when performing a single joint or an isolation movement. Getting 50 kilos stronger on a fly motion where your chest is isolated and the only thing that your body can recruit is your chest, and therefore the stimulus going all into the chest, your progress will be reflected in your physique instantly. Now, if you want to go even deeper into absolutely maximizing motor unit recruitment for your specific muscle group, you need to add unilateral exercises into your arsenal, as when performing a unilateral exercise, your body just has to recruit that specific muscle on just one side, which leaves your CNS to recruit even more muscle fibers or reach those high threshold motor units, which will allow you to get an even greater stimulus on a set per set basis for that specific muscle group. If you want to absolutely blow up a specific body part of yours, you want to combine all of these 3 exercise selection factors into one single exercise. That could look something like this for the lower lats specifically. You're training the muscle where it has the best leverage, from 90 to 60 degrees of shoulder adduction, instead of going all the way up like in a pull-up or a pull-down, just because it is the traditional way to perform those exercises. It is a single joint exercise isolating one specific joint action, which is shoulder adduction, and not incorporating your arms for no specific reason, like in a pull-down motion. And of course, it is a unilateral exercise. By the way, if you are not happy with your results, or you want to be absolutely sure that you are maximizing your natural muscle growth potential, make sure to check out my one-to-one coaching to fully commit to your goals and let me help you reach them. Or if you're interested in some of the best programming in the world without any hand-holding, make sure to check out my programs, where you get 5 different programs for any specific muscle building goal you can think of for the price of one program. The links for my one-to-one online coaching and programs are in the description and comments down below. Check them out, bro. The third tip is to increase your frequency. You can literally implement all I've just mentioned, but if you're training with just a 1 time per week frequency, like in a bro split, you're absolutely wasting your potential and you will not see the progress that you could see as if you were to increase your frequency to 2 times or 3 times per week frequency. A study has shown that just 1 set performed 2 times per week gives you a better stimulus and will therefore result in more muscle growth than 8 sets performed 1 time per week. But how the fuck could that be? There are 2 reasons why frequency is massively important for maximizing muscle growth. The first reason is maximizing the frequency of the first most stimulating set, as not every set within a workout gives it the same stimulus. You need 5 additional sets, essentially performing 6 sets, just to match the stimulus of the first set. Due to in-session volume having definite diminishing returns after a certain point, plateauing at roughly 4 sets within a workout, and therefore not having a linear dose-response relationship, meaning that volume is not important at all, and you should look at maximizing frequency instead of volume. The second reason is muscle atrophy, which means muscle loss. You need to know or realize that muscle loss happens much faster than we thought it would. It does not matter how many sets you perform on a 1 times per week frequency, as all the stimulus you have created is completely gone to your next workout, which means that you have not gained any muscle from that workout. Now compare that to 2 times or 3 times per week frequency. The stimulus just keeps fucking piling up. It doesn't matter how many sets you do, just 1 set is enough to see muscle growth occurring. But even though I've slandered the 1 time per week frequency bro split, I truly believe that if you want to prioritize the muscle group, 2 times per week frequency is still the bare minimum. I would highly recommend you to train with the highest frequency possible, which would be a 3 times per week frequency, or training every other day in an asynchronous split, which results in a 4 times per week frequency when looking at an 8-day cycle. The reason is that you maximize the amount of times you can get that first most stimulating set throughout the week, throughout the entire fucking year, and you will minimize the time you spend on atrophy, as atrophy kicks in after 48 hours after workout. And when do you train your body again? After rest day? After 48 hours. Every 48 hours, you're performing a full body session, meaning that you're not spending any fucking time in muscle atrophy, which means that you will constantly grow till the day you die. Yeah. Woo. What I love to do is to look at the numbers of workouts you have trained a specific muscle group throughout the entire year, depending on the frequency you're training at, just to grasp the idea and the difference of how much frequency matters. The only viable split to achieve a 3 times per week or even 4 times per week frequency is the full body split. I highly recommend the full body split, but I will not go in full detail in this video, as I've made a whole nother video comparing the high frequency splits to each other, the pros and cons of them, which you can watch right here after this one. But let's say you've watched the in-depth video and you still don't ever want to train with a real full body split, training your whole body in one session. What could you do instead? So instead of training your full body in one session, you could just train your priority muscle groups in the full body style, training them every single workout, and the muscle groups you don't give a flying fuck about, don't just put them at the very end of the session. You can go one step further and train them every other session, which when looking at the 4 times per week frequency on an 8-day cycle, like I've mentioned before, would result in a 4 times per week frequency for your priority muscle groups and just a 2 times per week frequency for your deprioritized muscle groups, meaning that you will still get the benefit of a full body split, but you don't have to train your whole body, your legs, every single session. You need to know the right volume guidelines to use when you're training with a high frequency split, as recovery is your best friend. So when training with a 3 times per week frequency, you'll want to perform 1 to 2 sets for a specific muscle group within a session. And on a 2x3 frequency, you want or can perform 2 to 4 sets for a specific muscle group in a session. I've given you a set range which you can experiment with and not a clear black and white number, as every single body or especially every single muscle group has a different recovery rate, meaning that some muscle groups like the chest or arms, which have a worse recovery, may benefit from less volume, and other muscle groups like the quads, the calves, and the abs can absolutely tolerate more volume, and you will not hinder your growth for those muscle groups if you go a bit higher with your volume. I highly recommend you to play with these guidelines, as more volume to some extent, especially when you're training for higher frequency, is more growth at the end of the day. So you don't want to just put yourself in a box and say, okay, my chest cannot recover from more than one set on a full body split. It is absolutely not possible. Maybe it is for you, depending on your situation. Now, for example, for the quads, if you absolutely don't give a fuck about them, why should you push the volume guideline to its max just because you can keep them to the lower end if you don't want to prioritize them? But the catch here is that you don't want to just add in more volume on any given exercise. For example, if you do a fly for your chest, you don't want to just add another set to that fly, but you want to be really perfectionistic with your exercise selection and spread your volume across all joint actions that your specific muscle has. For the chest, instead of just doing a horizontal fly, what's with the upper fucking chest? The upper chest does shoulder flexion and horizontal adduction, so you want to choose an upper chest fly and spread your 2 sets for 1 set across both of these exercises for achieving maximum chest specialization, as even though you're training with higher frequency, you need to recruit those specific muscle fibers that you only hit with an upper chest exercise for the upper chest specifically and the mid chest exercise for the mid chest specifically, as you can only develop a muscle to its fullest potential if you really bias it in an exercise, especially again on a high frequency split, as muscle fibers which you don't hit every single session won't benefit from the higher frequency. I will give you a more complex example, as the chest one was really simple. So we know that the lats have 2 functions, shoulder adduction and shoulder extension. So you want to pick an exercise that challenges both of those joint actions. You can get even more granular and isolate those joint actions with a pullover motion instead of doing a pull down or a row. Now for the upper traps, which have the function of protracting and retracting your scapula, you don't just want to cover that function with a simple row where other muscle groups are also taking over the movement or are contributing to the movement. You want to choose an exercise which specifically targets that function, which the only viable option here is the calzo shrug. The rear delts don't technically count to your back training, but they are still hit on a row motion, and because you're not doing rows, if you want to specialize in your back because you're doing calzo shrugs, you want to also isolate the function of the rear delts, which is horizontal abduction with a rear delt fly. For the spinal erectors, you have 2 options. You could either load up heavy fucking weights and train them isometrically in a deadlift motion, preferably a stiff leg deadlift or a deficit stiff leg deadlift, as those 2 deadlift variations are the best ones for spinal erector development, as they create the biggest moment arm from point A to B where the spinal erector is attached, which is the spine, meaning that the spinal erectors are doing hell of a work isometrically when performing a deadlift. Or what you could try is to isolate the joint function of the spinal erectors, which is spinal flexion and extension via a Jefferson curl, which you could argue is more targeted for the spinal erector specifically due to actually performing the joint action of the muscle instead of just having an isometric contraction. But again, the fucking load that you can lift with a deadlift and the massive force the spinal erectors have to create to keep your spine from bending into 2 fucking halves, which you could argue gives you a better stimulus than the Jefferson curl, even though you're not actually performing the joint action. But again, on the Jefferson curl, you use less load and you will get a better stimulus fatigue ratio, so you can pick and choose. Let's say you're pushing your volume to the max of the guideline. How do you actually know if you're recovering? It is not soreness, I can tell you that. It is if you're still seeing progressive overload occurring on a constant basis. If you're not getting stronger by 1 rep every single workout, or not adding a tiny biscuit of weight every single session, you are not progressively overloading and therefore not recovering. Of course, you cannot get stronger in every single session of the year if you're past the intermediate stage, but I highly doubt that you cannot get stronger 2 or 3 sessions out of 4. Adding just 1 rep throughout the entire week or even a month should not be the slightest of your concern if you're not an absolute elite natural bodybuilder. If you're not getting stronger by the slightest bit, session to session or week by week, your program sucks, bro. but it shouldn't suck if you stick to what I just said in this fucking video. Just like exercise sequencing, when you sequence your workout throughout the entire week in a manner that you are training your desired muscle group after rest day, will lead you to more muscle growth due to your CNS being in a fresh state and therefore you being able to recruit your high fascia motor units, simply meaning that you can get a better stimulus for your desired muscle group when you're training it after a rest day. Of course, this depends on the split you're choosing. If you're doing a full body or modified full body split, as I told you to do, you're always training that muscle group after rest day, which is another benefit, by the way. But I thought I would still implement this into the video if you don't want to train with a full body or modified full body split, but you're training 2 days on, 1 day off, so you know that you want to put the session that targets your desired muscle group at the very start of that sequence.